The year was 1776, and across the vast plains of northern New Spain, a storm was gathering not of weather, but of people. The Comanche, masters of the horse and rulers of the southern plains, were preparing to strike. To the Spanish, who clung to their fragile presidios and missions scattered across Texas and New Mexico, the Comanche represented both a terrifying enemy and a force of nature they could neither control nor fully understand. When the raid came, it would shake the Spanish frontier to its core, leaving behind burned settlements, shattered defenses, and a realization that the empire's northern borderlands were far more vulnerable than they had ever dared admit. The stage for this violent clash had been set decades earlier, when Spanish conquistadors first rode into the lands of the southern plains in the 16th century. They came as conquerors, bearing crosses, muskets, and the authority of the crown. But what they did not anticipate was that the introduction of the horse would change the destiny of the peoples they encountered. The Comanche, once a branch of the Shoshone in the Rockies, seized upon the horse like no other. By the early 1700s, they had transformed into the most formidable mounted warriors on the continent. Their ranges stretched across present-day Texas, Oklahoma, and New Mexico, and their reputation for ferocity in battle made them both feared and respected. Spanish officials in Mexico City were aware of the Comanche's growing power. Reports spoke of lightning-fast raids, herds stolen, ranches burned, and soldiers overwhelmed. In 1758, a Comanche war party of nearly 2,000 warriors descended upon the mission of San Saba, killing priests, settlers, and soldiers in one of the bloodiest raids of the century. One Spanish friar recorded bitterly, "They fell upon us like wolves in the night, and none could withstand them." The San Saba massacre shocked Spain's colonial administration and forced the crown to reconsider its tenuous hold on the north. By the 1770s, the frontier was tense, almost combustible. Spanish colonists tried to hold their ground in Presidio's fortified outposts of adobe and stonewall. Missionaries sought to convert neighboring tribes to Catholicism. Yet beyond their walls lay the open plains, where Comanche bands moved with freedom, speed, and devastating precision. They did not merely raid for plunder. Their strikes were calculated, meant to display dominance, acquire horses, and remind the Spanish that the land was not theirs to command. The raid that shook the Spanish came in the autumn of 1776, when a large Comanche force, possibly numbering in the hundreds, swept down into Coahuila in Texas. Witnesses described the sky darkened by smoke as villages and missions burned. Families fled into the presidios, clutching what little they could carry, while Spanish cavalry scrambled to mount a defense. The Comanche struck with terrifying efficiency, attacking isolated ranchos, seizing cattle and taking captives. Their horsemen, bareback and armed with lances, muskets and bows, outmaneuvered the Spanish dragoons, who struggled to adapt to the fluid, fast-moving style of plains warfare. Spanish chroniclers left accounts of the devastation. One officer lamented, "The land is emptied, the people scattered, and all tremble at the name of Comanche." Even the fortified presidios proved inadequate. At some outposts, Comanche warriors rode boldly within sight of the walls, taunting the soldiers, knowing that pursuit meant almost certain ambush. The Spanish crown had poured resources into frontier defenses, but on that day, the Comanche demonstrated that the empire's military backbone could be bent, even broken. The aftermath was grim. Settlers abandoned entire regions, creating what later historians would call a Comanche barrier, an ungovernable zone where Spanish authority could not reach. Missionaries wrote desperate appeals for soldiers, supplies, and reinforcements. But Mexico City, already stretched thin by imperial obligations across 2 oceans, could do little. For the Comanche, the raid was a victory of survival, power, and deterrence. For the Spanish, it was a humiliating reminder that their northern frontier rested on fragile foundations. In the years that followed, Spain tried diplomacy as well as force. Treaties were attempted, trade was offered, and emissaries were sent to negotiate peace. Some temporary truces held, but they rarely lasted. The Comanche understood that their strength lay not in negotiation but in dominance. As one later Spanish governor admitted, "We do not make peace with the Comanche. We endure them." The legacy of this raid and countless others like it was profound. It weakened Spain's hold on Texas and New Mexico, discouraged further settlement, and exposed the empire's inability to control the vast northern lands. When Mexico later won independence from Spain, it inherited this frontier crisis, struggling for decades with the same relentless Comanche power. And in time, even the United States, with its larger armies and greater resources, would find itself challenged by the horsemen of the plains today. Historians look back on the Comanche raids not simply as episodes of violence, but as moments that shaped the destiny of entire nations. They remind us that the Spanish Empire, despite its grandeur, was vulnerable on the fringes. They remind us that the horse, once brought from Europe, had reshaped the balance of power in North America. And above all, they remind us of the Comanche themselves, indigenous people who rose from obscurity to become one of the greatest equestrian powers in world history. The story of the raid that shook the Spanish is more than a tale of fire and blood. It is a window into a time when empires collided with nations of the plains, when steel and muskets clashed with speed and strategy, and when the fate of frontiers was decided not in royal courts but in the dust of the open. Prairie dot, as we remember this chapter of history, we are reminded of the resilience of peoples who refused to bow, the fragility of empires that seemed invincible, and the enduring power of the land itself. The Comanche, like the wind that swept across the plains, could not be caged, and the Spanish, for all their wealth and ambition, were forced to reckon with a truth they could never erase on the southern plains of North America. The masters were not those who claimed dominion, but those who rode with the freedom of the horse. This has been the story of the Comanche raid that shook the Spanish frontier. If you value high-quality, historical storytelling, know that each episode demands research, dedication, and a commitment to accuracy. Your support helps keep these stories alive and ensures that the voices of history continue to echo into the present day.